I'd like to lead you in our pledges. The pledge to the U.S. flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The salute to the flag of South Carolina. I salute the
Flag of South Carolina.
and pledge the United States of love, and faith. The salute to the Confederate flag. I salute the Confederate flag with affection, reverence, and undying devotion to the cause for which it stands. Please remain standing as I read the charge to the sons of Confederate veterans, as was given to us by Lieutenant General Stephen Dill Lee on April 25th, 1906. To you, sons of Confederate veterans, we will commit the vindication of the cause for which we fought. To your strength will be given the defense of the Confederate soldier's good name, the guardianship of his history, the emulation of his virtues, the perpetuation of those principles which he loved and which you love also, and those ideas which made him glorious and which you also cherish. Remember, this is your duty to see that the true history of the South is presented to the future. As you remain standing, I will call on our chaplain, Jason Grooms, to give us an invocation. Chaplain?
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, with a somber heart, we come before you this day. We pause for a moment and call to mind Corporal George Lynes, Jr. and Corporal Edward R. Sims, who died in the service of our cause for the Confederacy. Dear God, please look with mercy on our brave and selfish brothers who did not shrink from the task but gave themselves completely to the cause of defending and protecting our ancestors. Bless all who have given their lives for the sake of liberty and grant them eternal rest within you. We remember also our brave men and women who currently serve in our armed forces, both at home and abroad. Dear God, send out your angels to protect them all. Help them discharge their duties honorably and well. Please bring them home safely to their families and loved ones. Please bring your peace and mercy to our troubled world. We ask for this in the name of Jesus, your Son. Amen.
Amen. Chaplain, take your day.
Throw that up.
You may be seated.
I'm going to go out then. Just watch my stuff there.
Hey, Bill.
Once again, welcome, and we'll wait for Adjutant Gary Millard to come forward to do the speaker introductions in just a moment. I will note for you that I would like to invite, first off, thank you greatly for the enormous turnout today and for all the families present. If anybody is interested, we will be doing a Confederate Memorial Day service at this same location, and it will be a candlelight service on, I believe it's May the 8th. But check with your local UDC member or sons and for the exact dates and times. Adjutant Millard, I turn it over to you, sir.
Welcome, and if you'll bear with me, we'll all get through this. I'm not a public speaker. I have more of a choked up, rambling style. But I did want to, since this is all family, there are some people that I wanted to thank for coming. First off, Jack Lynes. His roots are right here in the Low Country. Fox Bank Plantation. He's a successful businessman in the Aiken, Augusta area. He's a board member of the Chapel of Ease Association, and he's the chair of the Groomsville Association. And we appreciate the association allowing us to come out here and do this today. And he will be giving us some reflections on George Lynes Jr. The other person I want to thank contacted me about 6 or 7 years ago. His grandmother had been taken north in around 1920 as a prisoner of war when her mother had died at a young age, and she's buried right here. Dave was raised in the north, but he has taught me more about how precious our heritage is than the 70 years of knowing that I had Confederate ancestors. He has embraced his heritage, and he has taught me a lot personally about the dedication we all need to preserve the good name and the honor of our ancestors. And I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, who is Jack Lynes. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for inviting me and allowing me to speak. I want to apologize first. We have already arranged for this stone for John Henry to be fixed. And it was supposed to be fixed by today, but, you know, good help was hard to find. But that's already been arranged. And anyway, I just wanted to apologize for that stone being down. I'm going to tell you a little bit about George Lynes Jr. He was a handsome man, wasn't he? I think he was very handsome. I'm going to try to stand this picture up right here. It's going to blow over there. Now, George Lynes Jr. was born the 13th of December, 1837. He was as recorded in the family Bible by the hand of his father, George Lynes Sr. He was the first son of George and Elizabeth, and came into the world at Judge Landon Chee's Delta Plantation on the Savannah Back River. They had one of the largest rice plantations in the nation at 2,752 acres, where George Sr. was the manager. His education is unknown, but we know he was literate. He wrote poetry, and he kept journals, and he was a good, successful businessman. There's no doubt he worked alongside his father and learned the arts of rice planting and business, and especially the years his father managed Cumantee Plantation for Keating S. Ball, where they lived from 1843 to 1852. By 1852, when George Jr. was 15, they moved on to Foxbank Plantation. That's when it's family place after the death of old Samuel Lynes, the father. There he goes. He was well liked, and its parent, from the 1848 will of George Grooms, for whom this place is named. We see that even though he was only a lad of 11 years old, the husband of his father's sister Elizabeth, thus Uncle George, left him not only his gold watch and chain, but his house and plantation upon the eventual death of his wife. 11 years old. Elizabeth Grooms, his father's sister, later Elizabeth Creighton, she died in 1859 and mentioned in her will that she was leaving her husband's gold watch and chain, which is now in the possession of George Lynes Jr. Now, I don't find in the Covenant book where his baptism is recorded, nor his presence at any meetings, but a notation in January 14th, 1888 records, the Goose Creek Baptist Church met at Foxbank. Our brother, the Reverend Stephen Bishop, met with in behalf of the Charleston Baptist Association. Brethren present, S. Lynes, that's my great-grandfather, he's buried right over there. Richard Lynes, he's buried at the Methodist Church. Sister Annie Lynes, he's buried back there also. It was agreed to take down the old church and rebuild it in Groomsville. The church to bear the same old name. Brother S. Lynes was appointed deacon, and it was appointed to George Lynes Jr. to be active agent for the church property. And should he refuse, the right as agent be given to Brother R. Willis Haynes from the Ridge Church. That was ancestor. Now let's talk about his military service a little bit. Before his enlistment, he records in his journal that on March 1st, 1862, he went to muster. I'm not sure what that meant. He wasn't enlisted, but he went to muster. Now that was 11 months after the April 12th bombardment of Fort Sumter. Sunday the 2nd of April, 1862, he went patrolling. He records on the 3rd there was wind and rain. On Wednesday the 5th, he went to Ridgeville to a parade. On Thursday, February 6th, it snowed. Sunday the 9th, he went to Bethlehem, which is this building at the other place. Monday the 10th, he went back to Charleston. He says Pa and Cousin Bill returned from Charleston with a new mare. On Sunday the 23rd, he went to see Myers and dined with Mr. Sims. I think that's Edward's father. Planted rice at Harry Hill and corn and loaned somebody $400. Oh, excuse me, $4. That's 4.00. So at age 26 and a half years old, he enlisted on 10th of July. That's my birthday. 10th of July, 1862, on James Island, Company E, 2nd South Carolina Cavalry, by Captain McEwen. He enlisted for 3 years. His father recorded in his journal, "My son George went to war today, 30 July, 1862. He and his horse saw action in Antietam, Virginia, on 17th September, Stewart's expedition into Maryland and Pennsylvania, 9 through 12 October 1862. He was at Hartwood Church, 28 November 1862. He was at Dumfries. He was at Fredericksburg. He was at the Occoquan River. He was at the raid of Dumfries at Fairfax Station. He was at Brandy Station on 9 June 1863. Upperville, Virginia, 1863. Now the muster roll records he was absent on furlough July and August 1863 to remount. David, what happened in July 1863? You know what happened in July 1863? Gettysburg, that's right. He was on furlough. He was back down here. He was lucky. I don't know why he came all the way back to South Carolina to remount, but he did. His father recorded it in the journal. In his journal, my son came home. Son George came home on 12th August 1863. Effective that, he missed Gettysburg. Then he rendezvoused on 10 September and returned to the mountains on 9 October 1863, in time for the Bristow campaign. And then he was at the Mine Run campaign in November and December of 1863. In January, February of 1864, his muster roll records he was on furlough of indulgence to Charleston District, South Carolina. He left 12th February and due back 4th of March. Everything too tedious. In March and April of 1864, he was listed as president and promoted to corporal on 10 March 1864. In July and August of 64, he was listed on the muster roll as sick since the 25th of June in hospital in Charleston. The muster roll of December lists him as sick in Soldiers Relief Hospital in Charleston. Now, we had no idea at this time the nature of his ailment. We don't know why he was sick or what was wrong with him. But I do know that the Soldiers Relief Hospital was located at number 3 Trapman Street off Broad. And there's no longer a house there, but a short row of ugly condominiums. And 60-style condominiums. My wife and I had a contract to buy one of those back in 1975. I very nearly lived on the very spot where George Lynes Jr. spent many months in the hospital. But the seller changed her mind at the last minute. Either that or we didn't have the money. I don't remember exactly. Anyway, he got well enough that he returned, and his last skirmish was at 2nd Fort Fisher, January 1865. And Charleston fell mid-February 1865. In his journal, he notes that he returned home from Cheraw May 20th, 1865 on parole, thus ending his military service. His pay records show that he earned $12 a month. His horse earned 40 cents a day, which means that on months with 31 days, his horse made more money than he did. Later that year, he went to Charleston on June 28th and returned the 29th. He reported he planted peas and rice. July 17th, 1865, it was cloudy and rainy. August 19th, the Negroes killed the beef. He noted that he moved to Groomsville on the 19th, so it appears he was taking advantage of the George Groom's request. August 22nd, John Henry spent the night and they hunted on the 23rd. November 1st, he swapped to Lee-Bit mare. 11th on Sunday, someone died of smallpox in Aiken, and Sister Addie and children came on the 10th, November 1865. He noted all kinds of various mundane things, such as went to sea after a mule, or digging the slope, divided the crop. He hired Sam for a day, went to Charleston and paid taxes. He went to Bethlehem Church on February 11th on 1866 and gave Reverend Morris $5. March 12th, 66, he moved to Rice Hope. 15th, he went to Fish Pond, saw after a mule, went to Rehoboth Church, where he gave $1. He recorded transactions, who he sold a plug of tobacco to, a bar of soap, boot black. He records he walked to Bethlehem on July 8, 1866. July 29th, it had a fine rain last night, and on the next day he had fever all day. It was like me, I got caught in the rain on Monday and caught a cold. He accounted for his hunting in 1866, where he shot a 4-snag buck. They call them snags then. We call them points. 4 point, they call them snag. Anyway, his journal is quite interesting. He saved verses like, "My heart is constant as the turtle dove, unchanged and faithful wheresoever I rove. And my heart to you is given. Oh, do give yours to me. We'll lock them up together and throw away the key." In his own hand is written the following. I don't know if he wrote it or copied it from somewhere, but it's sweet just the same. He wrote, "The sweetest flower that e'er was planted by the hand of our Creator is the lovely garden to man granted, was woman, image of her Maker. And let our hearts and hand be joined, the wreath of love let us entwine. Earth, richest blessings all come, shall make us happy forever." He records inventory and recipes, and after his mother died in 1880, he did a lot of traveling down to Georgia, where he worked as a partner in Lynes and Blackshear, a mercantile operation in the refuge plantation down in Camden, Georgia. It tells a little bit about the man. He recorded in his journal the contents of his valise. He said, "I had one coat, value $5, one vest, $2.50, one pair of pants, $4, 3 shirts, $6, one red flannel shirt, one red flannel drawers, 3 handkerchiefs, one pair of socks, one necktie, one pair of shoes, one hat, one powder flask, one shot pouch, one wad cutter, one box of boot black, fishing tackle, comb and a brush, a likeness of my sisters, myself, and cousins, value $25. Photographs were worth that much in those days? Yes, they were. By the 1890s, he had earned and saved enough that he owned not only the 100-acre parcel of Fox Bank that he inherited, but he owned the 824-acre plantation Strawberry Ferry. We have a letter from Isaac Ball where he offered to buy it for cash money as it stands, saying, "I would not object myself to control both ends of the ferry." He adds, "I am sure no fancy figures will be considered, but think it possible that a deal may be made at very reasonable figures." His brother John Henry died in November 1898. That's John Henry's stone on the ground over there. And one day George was out at the wood pile cutting wood at Fox Bank, and he stopped and appeared to be talking to someone. When he came inside, the sisters asked him who he was talking with. And he said, "I was talking with Brother Brother John. He said he had come back for me." I told him that I was not ready to go, as there were some repairs that needed to be done, and I would need about a year to do them. He died about a year after that, from that time. And when he finally died in July the 3rd of 1900, at age 62 and a half, his personal property, including cash and bonds in various banks, was valued at $3,559, the equivalent today of some $97,000. The Strawberry Ferry contained 824 acres. He left Strawberry Ferry Plantation to his nephew Leo Sims. He left $600 to the Groomsville Church, the interest of which was intended to keep it up or rebuild it in case of fire or storm. $600 in 1900 is worth about $16,460 today. We don't know what became of that. He left his sisters Annie, Addie, and Rebecca, and two brothers George and Sam $100. He left his gin, known as Martha Gin, to his brother Richard, along with a saddle, bridle, and spurs. Now I know that believes that we mentioned that his contents of it ended up with Evelyn Van Nuys, and it now lives in Augusta, Georgia. Various nieces and nephews received cash bequests, and nephew George Guyton received a gold watch and chain. He left his 100 acres of Foxbank with the house to his sisters Addie and Addie in a life estate and a black mare named Mignon. After their deaths, the land would go to Harvey and Adolph Lynes. It's interesting to note that although he never married, modern DNA reveals that he does indeed have some descendants. Apparently he grew up with a young servant girl named Lucy, and when he was a very young man, he produced a child with her, who they named Martha. It's interesting to note that his gem was named Martha. I wish I could have known him, and I feel like I've gotten acquainted somewhat through the research I've done. He was a man of honor who served with distinction and lived with integrity. I think the world's a better place for having had George Lynes Jr. in it. Thank you very much. David, I think it's your turn. Okay.
Our next speaker is Dave Lynes, come down here from New Jersey to speak to us. But before he takes the podium, I would like to thank two people for being here. That Edward Sims has 3 remaining grandchildren, and 2 of them are here today with Coleman Dangerfield and Julia Britton. And we really appreciate his grandchildren being here.
First, with that very beautiful introduction that Gary gave earlier, and with Jack's speech, boy, do I have a tough act to follow. I, too, have a picture of Edward here. And yes, I think he's a dashing young man there. And what's unique, number one, is you don't see too many Confederates in uniform. There's some out there, but when it's identified, this means so much. When I first contacted Gary, he was so gracious. It really touches my heart because this is family I really didn't know about. And to have a picture and be able to look into the eyes of a man who saw quite an amount of action during the war between the states is really just amazing. And ladies and gentlemen, I've given a lot of speeches, and this is the most nervous I have ever been. So please bear with me. Dear compatriots, members of the UDC, Santee Artillery, family and friends, to my fellow compatriots, I'm the commander of the Private Merit School Camp of Hamilton, New Jersey, and the STE camp in the state. I bring greetings from the compatriots of my community. It is indeed a great honor and pleasure to be here with you today. The honor of my great-great-grandfather, Uncle Edward Sims, accompanies D&K, 2nd South Carolina Infantry, and a member of the Brooks Artillery, also known as West Battery. Now, Edward was born March 14, 1837, in Berkeley County. Not much is known about his early life. It is possible that his father might have been Absalom Sims, as I did find in Edward in the 1850 census. The first time I see him is in the 1860 census, where he's a farmer. Now, I can just imagine what might be going through Edward's mind as events of 1860 were taking place. Sure, like everyone, he was caught up in what was going on. He wanted to see how the events played out. Maybe he was hoping that South Carolina would come out. Unfortunately, 156 years ago today, Governor Pickens calls for 3,000 volunteers. Edward steps forward and says, I know this. It's ironic that we're having this event 156 years to the day. He's going to enlist in Captain John S. Richardson's Sumter Volunteers. A few short days later, he's on Morris Island as he's with other South Carolinians ready to defend their home and state on service on Morris Island, ready to defend home and fireside against the Yankees as the beginning of hostilities firing on Fort Sumter. On April 21st, 4 companies of the newly formed 2nd South Carolina, under that famous Joseph E. Kershaw, make their way to Richmond, Virginia in defense of the newly formed Confederacy. Among those making their way by train car was Edward. The Sumter Volunteers are now designated as Company D, 2nd South Carolina Infantry. The amazing thing is, the 2nd South Carolina Infantry has always been a great interest of mine. I never knew why. One of my heroes is Sergeant Kirkland, the Angel of Moody's Heights. And it is just overwhelming that my ancestors served in the same regiment, and they're very famous in South Carolina. I'm sure once in Richmond, Edward's probably learning about being a soldier, learning the monotonous drill, and everything that's going to go on. Now, the amazing thing is, he's not going to see action at First Manassas. He's going to see action a few days before. Everyone thinks that First Manassas was the first big battle. You had action at Centerville, and you had action at Mitchell's Ford, 2nd South Carolina, right there. They were fighting, allowing the Confederate Army to come up and to gather strength. 21st of July, he is in battle at First Manassas. I'm sure after that great Confederate victory, he thought, well, Confederacy, well, we can just leave in peace. Sadly, we all knew what the outcome was. Now, I think around August of 1861, Edward transfers to Company K, 2nd South Carolina, which is known as the Brooks Guards, which I believe is named for that famous South Carolinian, Preston Brooks. It's now commanded, Company K is commanded by Andrew Burnett Rhett, of the famous Rhett family. I believe his brother was the editor of the Charleston Mercury. And they're going to come back now in December to re-enlist. And this is where a unique chain of events will happen. Captain Rhett decides he wanted to be artillery. This was the Confederate government. 61 men, including Private Sims, now enlisted into the newly formed Brooks Artillery, known as Rhett's Battery. They're going to see action at 7 Days, Beaver Dam Creek, White Oak Swamp, Battle of 2nd Manassas, and Lee's first invasion north, the Battle of Sharpsburg. During the action at Sharpsburg, Edward is slightly wounded and is reported in the Charleston Daily Courier on September 29, 1862. Now, obviously, this wound doesn't keep Edward out. According to his records, he's still there. I can imagine what a tough gentleman, and he's a young man, what a tough gentleman this man is. In reading stuff, the men were talking about the march to Sharpsburg, how many of them were barefooted, but yet there was no murmur of complaint. That says a lot. No murmur of complaint. Going to be with his battery, the Battle of Chancellorsville and Fredericksburg. At Fredericksburg, they are manning 20-pound Parrott rifles. Fortunately, the location of that is on private property, but they were showing the pontoon bridges down along, I believe it's the Rappahannock River. I hope I'm right on that. Chancellorsville, Fredericksburg, then Gettysburg. Now, the Brooks Artillery is in an exposed position. Now, if anybody's seen the movie Gettysburg, the gentleman who played Chief Porter Alexander says to Longstreet, "Sir, don't mind the torn trousers. No officer riding around like this." Alexander was inspecting Brooks Artillery when he caught a piece of shell between his pants. They are in an exposed position. Alexander later says, "You men held the hottest part of the field." At no less than, there were 16 federal cannon trained on this position. These men armed with howitzers, federal artillery, are all rifle cannons. I'm sure the gentleman in the artillery knows how much devastation can be caused by the rifle cannons. The resulting fire on Red's battery can produce a 51% casualty rate. It is the highest rate of any artillery unit at the Battle of Gettysburg, Union and Confederate. Now, right after the Chancellorsville campaign, General Lee puts out an order, basically saying, if you're slightly wounded, we don't want it recorded. We don't want our friends to know what's going on, and we don't want to give the enemy our strength. Gary and I both believe that the Battle of Gettysburg, Edward is injured. Because September of 1863, he's homesick. October of 63, he's homesick. My personal feeling, with all that heavy shelling that's going on, he has a concussion. And he's trying to recruit concussion. September of 1863, Longstreet's Corps is moved out to the west. He's not going to rejoin until December of 63, where he re-enlists for the remainder of the war. Now here's a man who's already seen plenty of action. Very easily say, from my ship. Now, he is ready to see the job done. He's going to be there in time for the Charleston siege and Knoxville siege. Somewhere in 64, he's promoted to corporal. The battery is so depleted by loss that in February of 64, they get a 45-day furlough to re-enlist. And that's amazing. They're so depleted. In fact, it's mentioned how we've left many of our members in Maryland, Virginia. Spring of 64, of course, now we got Grant, who's doing his, now in charge of the Army of the Potomac, battling with Robert E. Lee. Final year of Red's battery. He's going to see action at the Wilderness, Spotsylvania, North Anna, Cold Harbor, Drury's Bluff, Petersburg, Sailors Creek, and finally Appomattox. January of 65, Edward received a 45-day furlough, and unfortunately his record ends there. By pulling his pension, he said he surrendered at Appomattox. I know that when many of the Confederates were going through parole, he said, "Go home. I'm not going to bother writing parole. I'm going to go damn home. Let's go." With duty done, Corporal Sims comes back to South Carolina, picks up the pieces of his life, best he can. When he gets home, he discovers an uncle thinking that he was dead, sold off everything except the land. He disowns the family and drops one M from his name. January of 25th, 1866, he marries 19-year-old Rebecca Lynes, who we are also honored here today. He raises a family. Now, I hope I'm right in this. Edward and Rebecca have 11 children, and one of them is my great-grandmother buried over there. On January 1903, celebrating the birthday of Robert E. Lee, Corporal Sims received the Southern Cross of Honor. As reported in the Charleston News and Courier on January 20th, 1903, an eloquent and instructive address by Major James F. Hart of Yorkville, the presentation of the Southern Cross of Honor to 70 gray yet intrepid veterans, made this celebration last night of Robert E. Lee's birthday a most impressive occasion. The exercises were carried out by the auspices of the Charleston chapter, Daughters of the Confederacy. Despite the wane and piercing cold, Hibernia Hall was crowded. On the rostrum, tastefully decorated with flags and evergreens, were representatives of the Daughters of the Confederacy, Major James F. Hart, Judge Charles Hamilton, and Colonel Asbury Coward, the superintendent of the Citadel, which I believe we're also related to. Colonel Coward, with an appropriate word, presented a Southern Cross of Honor to each of the 70 veterans of all their roles. I think that's amazing. accordance with Edward's pension filled out on October 14th, which happens to be my youngest son's birthday, 1919, he states he was discharged from the service at Appomattox due to surrender of the Army. He is wounded 4 times with back injuries and is deaf in 1 ear from shell exposure. March 17, 1921. I know his stone from 1922, but his death certificate has 1921. Edward died of a cerebral hemorrhage at the age of 84. It seems that there's 2 obituaries for him. The first one appears in the News and Courier in Charleston. And it basically says that I find this. I like the second obituary better because dies at Strawberry. Mr. Edward Sims of Strawberry responded to the call of Taps Friday after a brief illness. Mr. Sims served in the Civil War under Captain John S. Richardson, the 2nd South Carolina Infantry, company volunteer. Then it goes on about Captain Richardson being wounded at the Battle of First Bull Run, and then Sims is transferred to Captain Rhett, also the 2nd, where he served more than a year until he was transferred to Captain Rhett's battery. I was hoping maybe there would be some places where he was wounded. Then it talks about his colonels. His colonels were Joseph D. Kershaw from Columbia, Colonel Stephen D. Lee of South Carolina, Colonel Alexander of Maryland, Colonel John Cougar of Tennessee. His generals were G.T. Beauregard, A.L. Johnson, the later being severely wounded at the Battle of Seven Pines. Then Robert E. Lee took charge. Mr. Sims also served under the famous Stonewall Jackson. The last part is beautiful. He now has joined his brother in arms, most who have long preceded him, to assemble around the glorious commander under the beloved flag of their South. Thanks to Paula, there was a second obituary. Strawberry, March 19th. Special, Mr. Edward Sims of Strawberry responded to the call of Taps on March 18th at 6:30 p.m. after a brief illness. Mr. Sims honorably served during the war between the states under Captain John S. Richardson in the 2nd South Carolina Infantry, Sumter Volunteers. Mr. Sims was transferred to Captain Burnett Rhett's command, also the 2nd South Carolina, where he served more than 1 year, after which he was served to Captain Rhett's Brooks Battery, in which he served until the end of the war. I wish I could have known him. He has become a hero of mine. While many people talk about the famous generals and colonels, I look at that moon there. We all know what the Confederate soldier was. And it was amazing how resilient he was. After all that he went through, he could have just, the heck with it. No, Soldier John could do it. It is such an honor to be related to him. Closing, ladies and gentlemen, it has truly been an honor to be here with you today. I thank you for taking the time to honor these brave Confederate soldiers. I would especially like to thank my cousin, Gary, for extending this great honor to me, the Sims grandchildren here. Great-grandchildren. I'm a great-great-grandchild. I'm so honored to give this speech. I'd also like to thank Gary and his lovely wife, Bob, for their gracious hospitality. These are people at one time, and I could not ask for two more beautiful people. May God bless you all. God bless our country. May God bless our Confederate soldiers. Thank you so much.